Hello, this is Father Michael Nasser coming to you from St. Nicholas Orthodox Church here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, with this week's Midweek Reflection. And this week, I'm sort of going to riff off of something that I reflected last time, which is when I had been out sick for a couple weeks, sick with COVID, then recovering and isolating and all that. And then right when that was ending, I went off to Mexico, and I was worried about what are people going to think about me when I've been away and now I'm going off on this trip, which was to perform a wedding, but also some vacation time. So I was talking about, worrying about my reputation. What are people going to think? Now I want to flip that around a little bit and talk about what we think, especially when we're thinking about other people or situations that other people are in. And one of the things I want to advocate for is something that seems to be more and more out of style, and that is looking at truth, looking at facts. So to set this up, there I am at this wedding down in Mexico last week, and during the reception, there's this sort of series of people who come and sit down and say, "Father, I want to talk to you about what I heard in the service today." And what you hear in an Orthodox service is St. Paul's writing, which is really about Christ and the church, but then he talks about a husband and a wife in marriage. And in that text, he says, "Wives, submit to your husbands." And people are telling me how that doesn't age well these days, and it's so outdated, and it's so old-fashioned, and it's so against what we know to be right and true now. So as I'm having these conversations, which is an old conversation, I've had this for more than 20 years, as long as I've been a priest, people have been asking this question after a wedding. And what I say is, yeah, but did you read the whole thing, or did you hear the whole thing? And they say, well, I don't want to hear it. It's how it appears to me. I said, yeah, but if we don't start from the fact of what it's actually saying, forget about how you can interpret it, but you're looking at the fact of what it says, how can we have a discussion about it? And in every one of those conversations, the people didn't want to talk about what it actually said. They wanted to talk about what it sounded like, what one segment pulled out sounded like when you ignored the context. So what I want to encourage us to do is really all work very hard on focusing at what's the truth. Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." So he's encouraging us to think very deeply about the truth, not just the appearance, though, again, we talked about that before, appearances, and I hear all the time, perception is reality, and it's the optics, and I've actually said we have to consider all that. But never at the expense of the truth. And the truth is, what St. Paul talks about was not just a wonderful advancement in the cause of women and husbands and marriage. It was an advancement of God's kingdom using the marriage of a man and a woman, but also to talk about Christ and the church. That's the fact. That's the reality. And you can't read that passage and miss out on the reality. Another time this hit me was recently, as I'm coming back now, people are saying, well, Father, you got to isolate when you get back from Mexico. Well, actually, I don't. I just had COVID. And again, we don't know anything about everything, or we don't know everything about some things. But what we do know is somebody who has had COVID recently is the safest person for anybody to be around. The natural immunities that getting the disease and fighting the disease off makes you safer. Now, are you completely safe? No. We're never completely safe. We'll talk about managing risk in another video. But in terms of relative safety, I'm the safest guy that, if you know me, that any of you could be around, because I just had it recently. According to science, I'm no longer contagious. And yet some people, it's been very hard for them to see that I'm coming back. They say, well, you should get a negative test. Well, I can't. I'm not going to test negative for COVID for weeks or months. Why? Because my body, in shedding off the virus, is going to show that I've had the virus, but I'm no longer contagious. Or at least I'm 90% less likely to be contagious than anybody else. So again, there's no certainty, very little certainty in terms of facts and all these things, but I'm as safe as you can get. And yet some people are saying, well, fathers should test negative. I can't test negative. Fathers should quarantine. I shouldn't quarantine. Other people should quarantine a lot more. I did my quarantine. I did exactly what we're all recommended to do if you get the disease. Again, we've got to just focus on facts. If we don't do that, something will take the place of the truth. And most often these days, I'm going to suggest that what takes place of the truth is our fear. our fear of the unknown, which is the definition of anxiety, the fear of things we can't control. And if we let that go wild and don't rein it in by the truth, the facts, then you're going to see exactly what you're seeing the rest of the world happen in your own life. Fear will grow exponentially to the point where you get paralyzed. There are people who get paralyzed because fear has grown exponentially. People haven't decided to rein it in with the facts. And the facts are there's no absolute safety in life, but there is relative safety. So whether you're thinking about the epistle in a wedding, or whether you're dealing with somebody who's had COVID, or whatever situation you're dealing with, I want to encourage you to literally force in your mind, in your heart, force facts back up to the top of the list. Force truth to be the thing you think about much more than what will come in if you don't do that. Because what will come in will be principally fear. And along with fear, by the way, fear has a lot of friends. Fear has anger. Fear has discontentment. Fear has judgment. All these things come rushing in when we don't push back with the truth. And who's the truth? Jesus Christ is the truth. He's the way, the truth, and the life. He's the one who says to us, I have solved every problem you have, including the death that we're also afraid of. He even solved that. So, I'd like all of us, myself first, but all of you listening to this video, to elevate the truth, to push up in your priority list reality and truth, and that will push down fear and all the things that want to encroach and become central in our lives. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you will, if so, you share it with your friends via social media. And God willing, we'll see you in next week's video.